There's a moment in every Persona game after Persona 3 where the main character stands up. It's the grand finale, the odds overwhelming, all hope seems lost, and Igor arrives in your subconscious and reminds you of the bonds you've made, the journey you took that led you to this point. You, the main character, stand up against the god at the end of your year in whichever part of Japan you're in, fictional or otherwise, and through the strength of your bonds, you transcend the limits of those around you, a culmination of everything you fought for. The scene has only gotten cooler and fancier as these games progress, with the P4 MC throwing off his glasses or the P5 one summoning the devil who shoots a rad gun, but there's something kind of scary about the one in Persona 3. There's many reasons for this, some mechanical, where the true form of the final boss is a big, epic combat sequence in Persona 4 and 5. Nyx's arrival doesn't even give you the dignity of a boss fight. She arrives and your party falls to the floor, unable to bear her presence. It is the totality of the circumstances. Something is happening that is strictly beyond mortal capacity, even after you just finished fighting one of the most arduous bosses in the game, especially if you got screwed and they charm Yukari and she heals the boss back to full HP, and god, I hate it. No, this isn't a challenge that you can grind and farm out equipment and gain a cool enough persona or raise your level high enough, and that makes our main character standing up here, after reflecting on the things they've grown to cherish this past year, so potent. It isn't even a mighty display of strength. Our hero isn't so buff that they just get to be cool enough. You know, they don't get a clean, elegant, stylish final persona. They stand up here, and no one knows how to process it, how to understand what is happening, how they're doing this. You stand in defiance of a power beyond you where no one else can. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just clear the air a bit. Persona 3 is a game about death in many, many ways. I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that most people who start to think about what this game means and is trying to say will get this first and foremost. And it's obvious, right? Like, your party members shoot themselves in the head to summon their personas. Normal people get turned into coffins in the dark hour. Water looks like blood there, too. You know, your first persona is Orpheus, a mythic figure known for traversing the underworld in a doomed mission to save his love. And in a fun nod to the parts of the myth that often go unremarked on, his body is all machine, rebuilt around his only organic-looking element, his head. Yes, Persona 3 is a game that is about death explicitly and overwhelmingly so, and this isn't to mock people who've picked up on this, though I guess I am doing that on some level. There's more to this. I can't really have a normal relationship with this game. It came into my life as a teenager. It was a game that I told my parents was so important to me that they, in the height of their anxieties around video games, got me a PlayStation 2. I had a really dark childhood. I lied like a liar. The exact kind of childhood I was destined for. One where all of my struggles and worries and issues were summarily explained away by supportive, kind parents telling me I'm going through perfectly normal things. And when you're lucky enough to be boring enough to only have abstract problems like struggling to make friends or hating your body or not being able to focus on anything, you start looking for some way to make sense of yourself. I was normal, painfully, excruciatingly normal. Normal enough that everyone goes through what I did, and yet I alone remain incapable of bearing these mundane issues, my ubiquitous tragedies seemingly effortlessly conquered by everyone other than me. So that's how you start listening to Bright Eyes. That's how the fiction of yourself as a tragic figure can start to form. I wanted, on some sick level, to have a legitimate grievance, to be truly and tragically maligned. And in hindsight, I probably was, but not in a way that bothered the right kind of people. Lots of people don't make friends or are generally public embarrassments of themselves, and if you can hate yourself into doing all your schoolwork and generally be quiet and respectful in class, no one's going to really think anything's wrong. I'm telling you all this because, well, okay, because I haven't found a new therapist yet, sure, but also to help you understand the mindset I was in. I was a morose kid with a deeply worrying diary filled with thoughts that Mr. YouTube would prefer I not share, and you'd think a game as overwhelmingly macabre as Persona 3 would be like putting gasoline on a car fire, but I don't know, maybe you're clever enough to guess that depressing art isn't here to make people want. I'm getting off topic. Look, yes, Persona 3 is about death. Yes, we're going to be talking about it, but there's more to it, right? Maybe some of that more is my own escapable nostalgia, but I'm not going to shy away from this video until we get to the bottom of it. Persona 3 is a gem of a game, one of the best I've ever played. The best game in the entire series, with the only really relevant competitor for the title being the Persona 2 duology. Yes, this is discourse. I've been working on this video for over 2 years, and we're going to go through it. Why people don't like Persona 3, some of its worst flaws, some of its greatest trials, and what it did to my brain in my youth. I wanted something more snappy and clever to lead in on, but I don't think we're going to get that. You know, part of engaging with this game sincerely is a willingness to be, at times, embarrassingly vulnerable. And I already did that, and it's just the introduction to the video. This is going to be a long one. Okay, so look. I have a thing as an essayist where if I'm going to be brutally critical of a game, I want to try and balance it out up top and explain what I like about it. And because I'm about to spend way too much time today going on about this game and like how it altered my brain chemistry, I want to make it clear that Persona 3 is by no means flawless. There are parts of this game that I genuinely detest, and I think it cheapens the experience for the sake of exhausting old school tropes and gags, and they kind of obliterate a lot of the empathy that should be generated towards characters essential to the story. You know, having Junpei and Ryoji trick you into sneaking into the bathhouse to peek at the girls on your team is maybe one of the worst moments in the entire series, mercifully saved by Persona 4 doing it much worse, and also having just kind of a semi-consistent gag of women as objects to be lecherously looked at when they're hot, but reviled as grotesque unmentionables should they dare to be fat or old. Ungood things, TBH. There are a lot of other issues going into Persona 3, though, and some have a little more merit in their accusations, and others are way more complicated, and most of these can be seen in the social links. See, Persona 3 invented modern Persona, which includes the idea of the social link. Throughout the game, you'll develop bonds with characters that represent a major arcana, from Fool to Judgment, with every version of P3 after the original, including Aeon, so you can have a transcendent moment of art in talking to your robot girlfriend about the ephemeral beauty of life. But as a proof of concept, a lot of these links are pretty dicey compared to the oftentimes more refined and smooth ones from 4 and 5, and bizarrely, I am going to defend a shocking amount of them. A lot of them are quite good, even when they are deeply embarrassing to witness. I think personally the most offensive social links are the ones that are kind of forgettable. Like, I like Fuka, but her link is mostly her meandering around wanting to cook because she's the only girl in the game who's bad at it, and instead of it being played solely as a wacky comedy thing, it develops into a nice little thing about her trying to be more helpful. It's fine. It just feels less connected to what she's supposed to represent with her arcana and more making her a distinct romance partner, which the romance in Persona 3 is weird and mandatory for a lot of versions if you want to advance those 5 particular links. Yay, cool. And look, the act of making these 5 characters' love stories all ends up dedicating a lot of fluff time where they just kind of loosely have the hots for you, and it makes a lot of the stronger points of their links feel more sparse. It's not exactly an ideal situation to be in. I already don't really like video game romance where one partner is a silent self-insert protagonist because it feels so indulgent and weird, like the only focal point moving this relationship is this character one-sidedly expressing attraction to a character built to pour ourselves into. And while, yes, this is a problem that still exists in 4 and 5, and I will argue in the future that Persona 3's silent protagonist is one of the better realized takes on the concept, this is one of the more glaring weaknesses of the game. Unfortunately, in a real way, Persona 3 kind of has problems with women. I'm sorry. Now, okay. Those are the complaints that I think make up most of my issues with the game. There's a lot more that people point to and complain about, but unfortunately for all of them, I disagree. Let's talk about party AI. See, in the original and FES versions of the game, you straight up didn't have control over your party members. You could give them broad orders and change their AI to do different things in battle, sure, but you had no say over their actions. This is the only time in the series that they tried to do the system, with Persona 1 and 2 being kind of very different beasts, more in line with older RPG design philosophy, and in 4 and 5, they just changed it to let you control the whole party anyway, as well as every remake past FES doing the same. Many people, me included, in some places on the internet, pretty firmly agree that the change to control your whole party feels better, And as combat gets really complicated, being able to know how to use every party member directly feels much better than having one action per round of combat to control and hoping that your 3 pals won't ruin their turns. This is a decision that I ultimately favor, though we have lost something in this translation, because the effort towards certainty and clarity wasn't just adding direct commands. You have constant and direct access to the party's equipment, which skills their personas learn, and they share your inventory now. Yeah, that's right. Old school P3 had the other party members have their own inventories, and they'd even go out and get new equipment on their own if you've neglected to upgrade their gear long enough. The energy of those old games made these characters feel more individual, people you are working together with, but who are doing things, dealing with their own lives, and the changeover makes this feel far more mechanical, more explicitly like a video game you're controlling. It's worth considering, at least. Beyond that, there really isn't many more glaring complaints that I can think of, right? Like, surely everyone else is big in favor of everything else in this game. Like, I'm sure there's no weird, big, massive thing that's looming over my head. Oh, wait. I think one of the central pillars of a lot of hate Persona 3 gets is situated on Tartarus pretty firmly. See, the humble JRPG offers you dungeons as bespoke set pieces. Maybe not all of them are mechanically distinct from each other, but they vary in setting and tone and intensity. Like, Persona 1 opens us in a hospital as our first dungeon, and through the course of the game, you find yourself in bizarre castles or inexplicable superstructures built out of the subconscious of a teenage girl. But Persona 3 just has Tartarus. 264 floors of mostly procedurally generated, sprawling floors that host enemies, treasures, and the Reaper, a new addition to the series like almost everything else in this game. It is a long-standing issue with a lot of players in the game that there's one dungeon, and that while the blocks all look a little different and the music is a little different, ultimately the mundane repetition is often a pretty harsh barrier of entry. But it's also great. Like, see... I've said this in 2 other videos, and it feels weird to keep saying it, but Persona 3's mechanics were built with the theming in mind, and the reason why this is a calendar year dating sim mashed up with a dungeon-crawling big tower JRPG thing is because the game doesn't want you to feel like you have agency in this story, and a lot of that is wrapped up in Tartarus. Let me draw an example. One of the coolest and most fun things you can do in Persona 4 and 5 is clear the new dungeon in one day. Oftentimes, especially in the early game, this requires a good deal of knowledge and planning and preparation and all these good active actions you can take. You can feel really potently in charge of those games in a way that you can't in Persona 3, pushing yourself to the limit to solve the big problem and get back to your much, much busier school lives. But in Persona 3, Tartarus only exists in the dark hour, a hidden time that happens every day at midnight, so it takes up a time slot that's pretty sparsely populated. Even as recently as Reload, you can find yourself pretty easily running out of things to do in that time, and you can clear all of that section of Tartarus available to you in one day too, but the feeling is nowhere near as triumphant. You've gotten further until you hit a barricade, and you have to just stop. The bigger plot points and boss fights happen every full moon instead, and there is nothing you can do to take agency against that. Just prepare. Go to Tartarus as much as you think you need to. Stock up on things, build social links during the day, and just hope that you're ready for what's to come. The feeling is so different. There's kind of a muted sense that you're an active, cool player and more reacting to things that are inflicted upon you. It helps with some smaller inconsistencies. Like, it feels weird in 4 and 5 to have these big important issues looming over your head, but you can just choose to hang out with your school friends anyway. Like it helps you mechanically, but it helps in a way that seems strange to try and justify in a lot of cases. In contrast, you can only go to Tartarus during the dark hour, so what else are you going to do with your time? You have to, in fact, try and live a normal life, so that time is yours. And even in the evening, there's only so much you can accomplish in Tartarus. There's no big looming thing you have to fight before the time's up. And while each version of the game's past fests add extra incentives into it, ultimately it's hazy and unpleasant and feels like a weird obligation. It's good for the story. It just also isn't fun. Is it okay for some video games to be unfun on purpose? Yes, obviously. If you play Fire Emblem, you know this instinctively. This is the reason why Mementos in P5 doesn't feel nearly as good as Tartarus, despite having years of mechanical refinement on its side. Persona 5 has mementos as a concession for not keeping dungeons alive past completing them, letting palaces be highly authored content, things designed to be explored and picked apart like you're doing a heist. And they're great for that. I do like the palaces in 5, but the other side of the coin is that we have to be able to grind in this JRPG too, so here's procedurally generated hallways, baby's first Tartarus, and like 3, it too holds the deep secrets of the final boss in the game, because there's nothing else to be done with it. And Persona 4 and 5 care a lot about logic and consistency. What do I mean by this? Well, okay, look, pulling further up on the list of invalid complaints, we should bring up the writing. See, Persona 4 and 5 are very invested in rules and keeping track of every element. Every little facet of these games are very carefully considered and written out. You know how the metaverse works, or the Midnight Channel, how shadows and personas function, what going berserk entails, what happens if you kill someone's shadow, and while there are a few smaller oddities in the story, like not knowing what happens to Mitsuo's shadow, or how Shido has access to scientists that can experiment on him to benefit his own, shadow self, there's a lot of effort in making sure they don't get complaints of plot holes, and that's fine. I'm not explicitly mad about that, but Persona 3 has no such concerns. Mitsuru's bike is special. They gesture vaguely at the Kirijo Group's experiments and technology being developed through years of research, but material things like how Aigis can seal shadows inside people, or how shadows can control electronics during the dark hour, or even basic little details like how you can open doors in a monorail in motion presumably are glossed over entirely. Who cares? The point in a lot of the writing of Persona 3 is more focused on what these moments and beats do to the characters. It's sloppy writing on some level, and you can endlessly poke and prod at the smaller things if you like being unproductive with your life, but one of the highlights of Reload for me is that while, yes, it does work a lot harder to try to make things make more sense, there's still just a lot of these little inconsistencies anyway. It's sloppy in the way that a lot of art with a great vision is. If things slide out of line, then so be it. Is it important to explain why Ikutsuki doesn't have a persona but still experiences the Dark Hour without becoming one of the Lost? Not really. He's like that because he has a role to fill in the story that needs him to be there during the Dark Hour but not be a combat presence, so there we go. By and large, Persona 3 is flawed, but not in the way that a lot of energy is spent on it. There's a lot of thought put into why the game operates the way it does. It didn't try and fail to make a more palatable JRPG experience because they're idiots, unlike everyone who's upset about this stuff. They wanted to make a game that deprives you mechanically of agency within the boundaries of a Shin Megami Tensei-style JRPG. Say what you will about Shin Megami Tensei, but those games luxuriate in player agency. The end of the first major act of the first SMT game is a nuclear apocalypse wiping the world out with you surviving and tasked with figuring out how you think the new world should be shaped. Who gets to inherit the Earth now? They're punishing titles for sure, but you have a lot of say in where the story is going. Persona 3 denies you that in a really clever way by weaponizing the passage of time against you. You have to experience time in all its comforts and agonies, and it does this better than 4 or 5 ever could, since the passage of time for those games is auxiliary, a mechanic that moves you from one big active player event that you can do a bunch of cool things in to the next. Persona 3's main vibe as you continue on into it is dread more than anything. And maybe that's a good segue into talking actually meaningfully about it. Persona 3 is spearheaded by a silent protagonist that you can name and even in one game choose the gender of. They are ultimately an essential character, critically and irrevocably important to the plot of the game, but they're not the character. What do I mean by this? Take, for example, Persona 5. The main character of Persona 5 opens with a police interrogation and being told by some mysterious voice that you are in a truly unfair game, a system rigged against you, but if there's any hope that the world can be a better place, it rests with you. And the rest of Persona 5 validates that. You unlock the secrets of Persona, you help your teammates break their chains, you confront the mystery killer because this is just a better Persona 4, you find the big guy trying to take over Japan, you and your teammates all get captured by the big god at the end and you break them out, you transcend your limits, you create the big bad super persona, you save the world, cool. Now, The Persona 3 protagonist runs a superficially similar progression, arriving, awakening to your persona to save a companion, and demonstrating a strange power no one else seems to have, but there's a couple things that stand out immediately. Firstly, while Teddy and Morgana come into their stories with a pre-existing knowledge about the shadows and their worlds and whatnot, in Persona 3, there's a research group who's been working at this for a decade before you even show up on the scene. Yukari, Mitsuru, and Akihiko all already have their personas, and when you finally summon Orpheus, the tone isn't shock and awe. Mitsuru says,
"Just as we thought."
You break out of that by Orpheus transforming violently in front of everyone, not just by being able to summon a persona in the first place. Going forward, you become the combat leader for boss fights and Tartarus forays, and in contrast to Persona 4 and 5, where you're the leader of this little group you've collected, staffed by people that care a lot about you and are committed to the cause, you're not in charge of the entire show. You're working for a company that your teammate Mitsuru's father runs, and that makes her kind of the one in charge in like an administrative sense. You straight up can't go to Tartarus if she and Akihiko can't make it. The game is trying to balance you out as important, but not the guy. See, remember, you represent the full arcana, as Igor explains. Your power is like the number 0. Empty, but full of infinite possibilities, and that's reflected in the narrative as well as mechanically. You sit at the nexus of the main plot, a plot that no one else in the game is really conscious of happening while they work themselves into the comfortable rotation of preparing for and fighting a big shadow every full moon. You alone see and talk to Pharos, who speaks enigmatically and prophetically about the events that unfold, warning you well ahead of the rest of the party. They are part of this grim, secret group tasked with bearing witness to the horrible unknowns of the Dark Hour, and you hold secrets even in that realm, connected inexplicably to these events in ways unnoticed by those burdened with a dark truth. This is why the game sticks out so much more in the writing, transcending its sloppier, momentary bits. Persona 4 and 5 starts and stops with you. Everyone in your party in those games gets a fun arc dedicated to their story. Each one gets some deep shame revealed and twisted to a breaking point until they reconcile with it and gain a persona and commit themselves to the team. And these moments can be really powerful and be a delightful spectacle, a great deal flashier than, say, having Akihiko recovered enough to join the team and now he's just here, congrats, you got him. Or 1 month, you just gain 3 new party members. But the trade-off is that after the cinematic arcs are done in 4 and 5, by and large, the cast is just around to be there. They're party members with fun quirks that occasionally pop into the main plot, but more often than not are just following you around Golden Sun style to opine on the plot as it happens to you, the most special guy on Earth. But in 3, there are entire scenes and subplots going on that don't involve you at all. Junpei gains a festering resentment of you for being picked to be the leader because he wants to feel more important than he worries that he actually is. And he's not a good student. He's teased ruthlessly by Yukari. No one seems to believe in him as anything other than a goof-off. And when he's gifted incredible power, he's brought into a group full of people who are all also gifted with incredible power, and he doesn't really stand out past that. There's already someone else on the team who can do anything he can do and more. And beyond that, Akihiko and Shinjiro keep confronting each other through the narrative completely divorced from you at all, because they have a history that has traumatized Shinjiro to the point of self-destruction, and Akihiko doesn't know how to change that. He just gets angry and bickers with him about it. Helplessness plays a huge role in this game, and it goes beyond the passing of time, the arbitrary stops in the tower. It stretches into you and your relationships with the party. You, the player, are made aware of conflicts that your avatar cannot interfere with because they don't know these things. You know something is going on, that there is some kind of dissent brewing in the team, but you can't stop Ken from seeking revenge, you can't turn Shinji's life around, you can't preempt Yukari's anger towards Mitsuru or Junpei's frustrations with you. You're important, but you're not God, no matter how many of them you can summon. It feels weird to sing the praises of a game that thought of doing something as basic and obvious as having the characters in its story develop meaningfully through the course of it, but it works on so many levels for this title particularly, and a lot of that work goes into decentralizing you from, the pedestal. You are not so singular in the lives of your friends that they remain static fixtures waiting for you to fix them or spend time with them in order to navigate their own lives. And it wouldn't work if they were. Since the plot is happening constantly at you, your role is more to bear witness to the story. You see the momentary victories your team gains, you watch the party struggle and bend and suffer as hopes get dashed, loved ones die, the world is condemned to oblivion, and while you remain at the epicenter, you do so silently, watching and supporting people as you can, but at the end of the day, growth comes from within them all. Let's talk about social links again. So, okay. One of the spiciest complaints I've heard lobbied at this game is that your engagement with the social links sucks because the most optimal answer to almost every dialogue option in these links is to kind of just endorse and agree with whatever it is the character in question wants. That's enabling. That's problematic. Persona 3 endorses cult behavior. Fucking got 'em. Look at Persona 4 and 5. You actually should say harder truths to a lot of these characters, and that feels more dynamic because oftentimes the right answer isn't just telegraphed to you. You have to be intuitive and thoughtful and superficially good at people to know when to say your piece. Isn't that more interesting? Well, yes, it is more interesting, but here's the thing. It's more coherent that you act this way in Persona 3. Is that because you're role-playing as an autistic person masking and mirroring your way through society? Stop reading my fanfic. No, it's because you're the fool. Your role in this deck of cards isn't to fix everyone in your life. The main plot assures you that you definitely can't do that in the first place. Your role instead is to reflect these people back on themselves. Let's take an infamous case. Kenji Tomochika. Everyone knows Kenji sucks, especially you, person who's never played Persona 3, but someone should alert Joe Zija because I'm about to defend this little punk. Kenji's storyline is that he has the hots for one of the teachers at his school. Uh-oh. And the most optimal answers for his link is to enable this, to encourage him and support him as he tells you this and plans to go ask her out and everything. And as the story progresses, he does just that. And then you spend some time listening to him bragging about having what seems like a relationship with a teacher, only for it to culminate in the teacher revealing that she's leaving the school and moving with her husband, with some dialogue from her that implies that she didn't see him like that and that Kenji has extrapolated whatever was going on into an idealized relationship. The link ends with Kenji realizing that he wasn't a mature partner and was in a situation that he wasn't ready for. And that's the point of this leak, and the general trajectory underpinning basically every social link in the game. No one gets what they want. This philosophy works really well with certain links that are more comfortable in trajectory. Empress, Emperor, Chariot, Justice, all of these are pretty easygoing stories. Mitsuru feels contained by her status as the scion of a powerful company and rejects an arranged marriage to instead live her own life, a thing so nice they just did it again with Haru in Persona 5. Hidetoshi thinks he can be in charge of the school's conduct and bully people into obedience, and comes to a realization that his obsession with power and authority has been making things worse, and letting go of these things and treating people with dignity and kindness was the answer. Kazushi sustains an injury on his knee and tries to push himself through it for a big important meet, and realizes that he's going to ruin his life if he doesn't stop and go through surgery, and so on. You get it. They're solid, understandable, good fiction, but the kind of captivating nature of these little stories shine through when the game decides to go off the rails and tackle things you maybe wouldn't expect in a JRPG. So the Hanged Man link features an elementary school girl named Maiko, whose parents are going through an ugly divorce. She doesn't understand why it's happening, and her parents are so wrapped up in fighting each other that her questioning them, trying to understand why this is happening, causes her father to...
Dad! He hit me!
And the painful agony of this is that, yes, you spend a lot of time in this link encouraging her to run away from home, and, you know, playing this as a teen back in the 1700s or whatever, this didn't hit nearly as hard as revisiting it as an adult, where the tone feels closer to stark panic, as this child needs more help than you can provide. See, for every high-key problematic link in this game, for every my homeroom teacher wants to date me, and this game was made in the mid-2000s and we fucking hated fat people back then, we'll just occasionally run into these beautifully upsetting and painful stories. Mamoru is a truly gifted athlete, and he has to give that up because his single mother collapsed and got hospitalized, and he has to help earn money and support his little siblings. It's deeply unfair to him. He has to give up his dream, but he sets himself to this new life anyway. He can't abandon his family, and it's melancholic and beautiful, and also in contrast makes me kind of want to throttle Keisuke for being super talented at art and being a doctor and having a rich dad that agrees to let him do whatever he wants, and he just can't decide which kind of career he wants. God fuck. And of course, I've been dancing around the big one. Maybe the one link that's in every version of this game that makes it all worth it. Akinari Kamiki has a terminal genetic condition and will not live to see his 20th birthday. You catch him outside on a bench in the last year of his life, and through his conversation, he expresses a deep, uncomfortable frustration. He cannot handle how much pain he has to go through in service to such a brief existence, and this builds into him in an effort to find meaning, writing a story about a pink alligator. See, this alligator's weird color makes it very hard for him to catch prey, so he's starving, but eventually befriends a little bird with a damaged wing that can't fly. They spend a lot of time together and develop a friendship, and one night the alligator eats him in his sleep.
After the alligator ate his friend, the bird, he cried and cried for a long time. In fact, he was so sad that he drowned in his own tears. His tears became a sparkling lake, around which grew beautiful flowers, and a tree that bore delicious fruit. The other animals in the forest came there often to relax, but none of them knew the alligator had created it, or that he was gone. The end.
This is the heart of this game, woven perfectly into a single side story. We cannot live our lives immaculately, and things will be inflicted upon us that we cannot control. Akinari's grief is ugly and uncomfortable and overwhelming at times, and the world moves on through it. You are sitting with the last few days of a dying youth, and then go home to your own problems. Finding meaning is all he had left in what little time he was afforded on this planet, and he couldn't. He could only write a story that will give others something of his life that he couldn't give himself. On October 4th in this game, Ken brings Shinjiro to the back alleys of Port Island Station to seek revenge. Shinjiro lost control of his persona, and it killed Ken's mother 2 years ago. Since then, Ken has had nothing to live for but revenge, and he takes this chance to confront him in a final blaze of righteous glory before taking his own life shortly thereafter. But it's revealed in this moment that Shinjiro's been taking suppressants that significantly shorten his life ever since the incident, and was going to die anyway. And when Takaya, one of the main antagonists, tries to shoot a crushed Ken, Shinjiro gives his life for him instead.
You've got your whole life ahead of you, so don't waste it. Make it your own, okay?
But I...
Aki, take care of him.
I will.
This is how it should be.
Up until this point, the story has maintained an occasionally grim but ultimately positive tone. The things are bad, but we're taking real steps in this and are saving the world, fixing the mistakes of the past. Shinjiro dies, depriving Ken of any sense of purpose and sending him into a fit of despair, with Akihiko left behind again, faced with another precious friend he couldn't save. The game makes a turn relatively late in the story, and then things get worse. You learn that the big shadows you've been heroically killing are in fact pieces of Nyx, and in killing them, we have summoned the end of the world, heralded in by the sudden betrayal and the death of Mitsuru's father. When the reality of such an event is made clear, you are told that Nyx is not something that can be fought, but the manifestation of death itself, answering the call of the people who seek oblivion. You are given a choice. Kill Ryoji, and with it everyone's memories of the impending end, of Tartarus, the Dark Hour, everything, and live out the final months of existence in peace. Or refuse, and at the end of January be faced with the brutality of oblivion, doomed with the knowledge of its coming. This is a hard game for me to talk about in a lot of ways, but this kind of progression changed me as a youth. It's not like I was unfamiliar with the idea of stories that get really dire and, sad closer to the end, but nothing quite hit like this. Like seeing a game where you were strong enough to knock down every big impressive boss fight only to be hit with a question like that. How do you choose to die? It's structurally incredibly well conceived too. Again, this entire game was built to tell the story, so all the time you spent on other people, their lives and stories, all are woven into this question. Forgetting everything feels like such an obvious bad answer, and it is, but the question doesn't exist to be hard. This isn't Persona 4 or 5, where the true ending has to be worked towards and thought out and solved. This is simple and honest and direct. What is the value in your experiences that compels you to suffer for them? This is also why Strega works the way they do. They aren't made to be antagonists that are powerful, intimidating challenges who ruin your plans and that you struggle against. Their conflict with you is thematic. They are rejects, failed experiments spearheaded by Mitsuru's grandfather. None of those three were made to have meaningful lives after this. They seek oblivion because it is what the world already is to them. Takaya represents your antithesis, but he isn't powerful or in charge or anything quite like that. He has seen the fate of this planet and the way he was treated by it and decides to embrace the oblivion, to delve into the depths and herald its coming. That he's not a powerful, tricky, cool boss fight is irrelevant. You can hit him down as much as possible, but you cannot beat his ideology. Not that easily. The effect isn't so novel, so subversive, but the kind of interesting thing about a game like Persona 3 is that I don't think it was written to subvert or twist the expectations of the audience like that, or to be big and provocative and dangerous, but instead earnest. Often the best art spawns affirmatively with a vision and a purpose and works towards that through the occasionally embarrassing or inelegant moments because the idea is so clear, so present. How do you really genuinely, meaningfully write a story about death and loss and grief? You write a character like Aigis. Our protagonist is connected to several key figures in this story. They harbor Pharos, who morphs into Ryoji, who morphs into the avatar for Nyx. But because you harbored him inside you, the two of you are kind of reflections of each other. That's why they have the same voice actor play each of these characters. Takaya, on the other hand, is your opposite. Someone put in a similar situation, but revels in death. Aigis is seemingly completely divorced from such things. She's not human. She's a robot. The fall won't affect her. She dies at one point in time in the game, but they rebuild her because she's a robot. You get it. And yet, part of her functionality as a weapon that fights shadows requires her to manifest a persona, so she's given a personality and intellect and the capacity for growth. At first, this is played for a lot of fun comedy events. She goes to school with you and doesn't understand how to people. She can understand and translate for Koromaru, the best dog in video games. But as things progress and her memory is restored and she realizes that she had sealed death into you 10 years ago and tries to stop Ryoji, tries to stop all of this, she fails. A month later, she returns more human, haunted by what has happened, begs for us to forget everything and live peacefully until the fall, and when she realizes that somehow everyone has decided to live and fight and face the end with memory intact, she reflects on her sudden growing humanity, that she is alive and not. Machine, but human. She's me. And hey, if it wasn't clear enough, every version of this game after the original gave her a special social link. Here, in the final month of the game, you get to spend time with Aigis as she struggles to reconcile these disparate parts of her. She's become distinctly human, but is limited by her body. She cannot help that her body is metal, that she cannot reconcile or understand the conflicting perspectives of what is important in her life as presented by Kiyoshi and his grandmother, that her affection and genuine love for the protagonist is, in her mind, imperfect, an impossible barrier because of her form. She is alive. She wants to be more connected to this world she's sworn to fight to preserve, but she isn't human. And as an internet cat, I get it. I get it a lot. They take this one step further still. In The Answer, an extra game mode in Fest that is largely criticized for being very grindy, and some folks don't like the extra lore or whatever, but notably, this second pass on this story, a real chance to save the protagonist from their fate, instead doubles down on it. The Answer situates Aigis as the new party leader, inheriting the protagonist's powers posthumously as you and everyone else is locked into your dorm on March 31st, a day that keeps repeating. Underneath the dorm is opened up a series of dungeons referred to as the Abyss of Time, and exploring those depths reveals everyone's pasts, the moments that originally defined their particular awakenings to their personas. Not as big, cinematic, flashy moments, but as small, quiet agonies and Mitsuru's. The party is eventually gifted a key that will let them decide. Unlock the door to the dorm and move on. Unlock the protagonist's room and return to the final battle. Or open the door to the truth and learn why they had to die. Importantly, Aigis during this runs into a sister model, Metis, who is a reflection of her machine half. Where she's lost a lot of her more robotic functionality, Metis has appeared with them intact. And in fact, she arrives threatening to kill everyone else in the dorm, their lives tethered to the abyss, causing it to grow. But you form an uneasy alliance and instead discover the truth. It's revealed that Aigis, upon the protagonist's final moments and at the end of the conflict, has no further purpose in this world as a weapon to fight shadows, but has her own interiority. And now what? What does she do with these two conflicting selves? Well, in the Abyss, she split those halves, Metis being her body while she retained her soul. Look, okay, Look, this is all about Aigis still, but I need to talk about Yukari while we're here. It's important. See, Yukari can be a polarizing figure in the game because she's kind of mean at times and people are cowards about this. She's a really interesting character, appearing first as kind of a popular girl type, pushy, unsure of herself, but it's quickly revealed that her father used to work for the Kirijo group and was part of the team that caused the Dark Hour. Yukari's investment in the story stems primarily from trying to uncover the truth of her father's involvement, and through the course of the story, she resolves to finish his task and try to save the world from oblivion. Good story, good arc, easy. And in The Answer, she fucking hates you being Aigis in this case. She is grief-stricken. It only being a few weeks since the protagonist's death at this point, and she's shut herself off, trying to move on from this. She finds herself trapped in the storm, doing another mockery of this conflict she had put behind her, while Aigis, who got to hear their final words, has their power now, is the new leader, and at the end of this, cannot decide what to do with the key. She snaps here, demanding that they go back and try something, anything to bring the protagonist back. She never got to say goodbye, never managed to make her peace, and that grief and anger makes her genuinely unpleasant on some level, right? But as an aside, that's kind of good. Persona 3, The Answer has so many roads to soften the blow, to try and walk us back from our end, and instead says that the only way to move on is to accept what is happening, that Yukari is grief-stricken and pretending that she isn't won't help, just as much as Aigis' attempts to try and silence her humanity. The truth reveals that the protagonist's soul has formed a seal on Nyx, holding out against the inevitable end, and we have to let them go. And if it were just this, if it were just this beautiful mess of a game, all tangled in its miseries and beauty, from the highly polished, genuinely shockingly good remake to the subtle charms and pitch-perfect aesthetic ambiguities of the original, I'd get it. And I think you'd all get it too, right? I've spent so much time on this, on the serene downfall gently orchestrated within a naive high school fantasy that itself starts to decay like the leaves with the change of the seasons. I think it makes sense why this game is so important to me. And yet, when I think about this game, there stirs within me dark memories, private feelings, a potent, scary awareness, my own cursed knowledge. I was a morbid kid. We talked about this before, remember? And that morbidity wasn't born from this game, it came from me. Something in my life was clinging to the dark depths of my young soul, and it was seeing Ken Amata here in the back alleys, looking like death after his entire life was upturned. And it's seeing it now, specifically, that made me want to go back. It's a very special kind of hard life that you impose on yourself. That's what it felt like back then. Material situations in my life, like my parents divorcing when I was still an infant, or moving from place to place constantly, almost a new school every year, never clung to my mind like this. They were facts, details. I visited my father over the summer, and by that I mean he would visit us while we spent our summers at our grandmother's house, and I thought nothing of this. I would cry every time I was put on the plane from one place to another, barely aware of why it was that I had to say goodbye to everyone in my life with some regularity. No, my internal worries, concerns, my darkness felt unclear, ambiguous. I wanted to die when I was a kid, but I wanted to die almost poetically, beautifully. I was buried in a world I couldn't understand. Things happened at me. My brother would wander into my room and look through my things or play with me or not, and I had no say in the matter. My parents would be around or they wouldn't. The teachers seemed to like me because I stayed quiet and followed the rules, but I was bad at making friends. Then I would have to leave for the summer. Summers were predictable, the same ease, the same haze of video games and candy and excess with occasional water park visits, family members stopping by, sleepovers at my cousin's with one who liked me a lot and one who seemed to find me annoying, possibly just by virtue of being younger than him, an aunt who was kind and had strict rules about language, who always had these weirdly cruel things to say about my mother, an uncle who rarely ever talked to me, and then I'd go back. And my grades would slip around a third grade because I was told that that's when my brother's grades started to slip, and I didn't want that. But it happened. It continued to happen. But my grades didn't slip in real ways, pretend morbidity. I had maintained a B average with some C's peppered in for flavor, but it was enough to make my parents take away all my toys in an attempt to make me focus on work. It never worked, and I felt like a disappointment in a way I could never figure out how to express. They weren't disappointed with me, but they didn't know how to reconcile these two pieces of data in my head, that they weren't upset, but they were punishing me in order to try and get better results, and it never worked. I was always struggling. I was always seen by my peers as smart and obnoxious, but there were students with better grades. This broadly was my childhood. It was bizarre and it felt random, nonsensical, but the material conditions were stable. I had a house. I had parents. My grades weren't labeling me as a problem student. I was a constant problem in my own life, but also nothing was ever really wrong. This is what I mean. I can look back now at this and see and maybe explain some things. Maybe I should have gotten assessed back then, but the result was this powder keg of pointless frustration. I couldn't be angry. Nothing was wrong. The world felt unfair, but I was led to believe that's normal. Everyone has these abstract, foundless ennuis that I did, and not everyone had the benefit of being middle class and white. So in this moment, without an outlet, navigating a haze of a precarious middle school where the bullying was at its worst, where I was in special classes in the middle of the day filled with other students I recognized as the weird kids, where I had rocks thrown at me, my knee permanently injured, albeit superficially, all without knowing that these years would blur away and meld together in memory. I had to live these years. I had to learn that there was nothing in my life worth being angry about. So, seeing this game unfold like this, to have someone quietly change the lives of everyone around them, to be in the back of the pack, and have trust and love and care, and to then use that charmed, beautiful, tragic life to do something miraculous. It was a revelation, and I wish I could say it was for the better, that it made me able to explain my own pain, to express this, to fix something, but it was actually an escape, a fantasy. I wanted this. I wanted to die doing something like this. It felt right, earned, and all this time I thought it was the main character, witnessing the world, quietly changing lives, on a journey to the answer, all while I was Aegis, lost in the perilous in-between of my undeniable life and my relative inhumanity. And I know this now, here, as an adult. And I still want to die. Let me explain. I'm not a danger to myself or anything. I'm not having the ideations or anything. It's just a feeling. I marked it down in my notes 2 years ago while in law school that after years of losing people, of my efforts I've spent through high school, through undergrad, into my adult life to craft a real, good, human personality, saved me from nothing. My little cousin got cancer. I lost almost every grandparent I had in the span of about 2 years. I lost some of the most important friends in my life. I've never dyed my hair or took hard drugs or had casual sex or had a physically intimate relationship at all. I kept on doing the right thing. I kept on trying to be kind and shy and giving myself to others, valuing everyone, and it saved me nothing. I have 2 regrets. One of them is that I've wasted so much of my life trying to not live it in a way that bothered anyone. And unfortunately, the other one is that I should have died the times that I tried. We've learned by now through friends, teachers, or horrifically through TikTok, how to deal with someone having suicidal thoughts. Hotlines to recommend, narratives to instill in them to try and de-escalate the person from an extreme decision. But I don't think many of us have clear guidelines on dealing with someone who's not in clear and present danger, but have found themselves wholly disconnected from at least a kind of sense of self-preservation. Like, I still eat food and drink water, and I don't take irresponsible risks or anything so outward and blatant, but I just have accepted that some part of me wants to not be me. And now, over a year later, I return to these thoughts still. I've improved, become more financially secure, I've grown tough in a lot of practical ways, and at once I feel ephemeral and impermanent, a supporting character in my own story. I told myself through law school that I had to get through it and I'll be a better, stronger person. Like I told myself while job hunting in Ohio, while working here in New Jersey, while taking care of family, soon, always. I always bargain with myself that soon things will be better. I'll have a real home and a real job and real money and real time to do everything. And instead, I am semi-constantly ruminating on why I'm even here in the lives of others. I believe that on some level, the answer to my gloomy disaffection is just to label it depression and be done with it. And it may be the case that I'm just depressed, but if so, it's a depression with a haunting clarity to it. It's not carrying the trademark haziness I feel lying in bed and convincing myself that the people I care about the most in my life seem to be growing more and more distant. It's learned behavior. I don't value myself as a person, not because I just happen to have the wrong chemicals in my brain and I just need the good ones, or at least not just because of that, but because that's how I learned to exist in this world. I value myself and it hurts people. And now I don't value myself and it hurts people too. There seems to be nothing, no right answer. I cause pain. That's when I thought of 2 things. One was, for some reason, the English voice actor's delivery in this exchange from Ray, a character from Persona Q, Shadow of the Labyrinth.
I prayed to God every day, and not one prayer was granted. Why did I exist? What was the point of my life?
The other was of the scene of Kinemata in the alleyway, quietly longing to be dead. That's when I started to work on this video. Kinemata has run away from the dorm here a day ago, lost in the fact that a self-righteous plan to murder his mother's killer and die has ended in a way he can't handle. And Akihiko gives him some tough love, having just come to terms with Shinjiro's death himself. I held back on talking about the Persona evolutions all video, and just as a quick aside, to cleanse a bit of the gloom here, every one of these evolutions are tied to big personal revelations that come about in the main story. And what I find particularly resonant about them is that they aren't always healthy. Akihiko has resolved to see this through and made peace with not being able to keep Shinjiro alive, but he hasn't processed this fully. The room for doubt and trauma abounds and haunts these characters constantly. That's why Yukari acts the way she does in The Answer, because no one truly gets what they want in this game. They're teens in that earnest way, teens that have been drafted into something more important, soldiers in a cosmic battle. Ken cannot get the luxury of a real, complicated answer to why his mom died and her murderer kept him alive, giving him back a life he was ready to throw away. He is given it and told that the rest of the team will carry on the torch and he can lie down and die if he wants. The game pushes everyone in this group to one extreme after the next, only to show that they bear it all. Everything. The death of a comrade, the prophecy that the world will end. They rally and they fight and they tell themselves what they need to hear to keep going. Pick up your father's memory. Live on for the fallen. Choose to live for yourself. Whatever happens. We start with a team brought together for a common goal, a team full of internal conflict and distrust, and end with a team unified and unbreakable. It's a story of grief and loss and death, but it is also every bit a story about hope and friendship and meaning. And then Nyx crushes you all. Total, absolute power and authority. Everything. Every loss and pain and omen. The entire Dark Hour trying to break the party's spine failed, but there is nothing to be done here. Nyx is death, and death has come for us all. And that's when you stand up. That is when you reflect on everyone in your life, the bonds you've made, and that's when you change the world, make a miracle happen. I couldn't see it as a kid. I saw this martyring as aspirational. Finally something good could come out of my life, but I was wrong. Our main character's life was not meaningful because it ended, it's meaningful because they lived. They experienced this beautiful world, its joys and sorrows, its pain and glory, and it is tragic that they die so soon, that this was the cost of their answer, and it is profound that it happened at all. We don't get the luxury of deciding how long we get to be alive, but we have to accept that our lives cannot be so effortlessly used, that our passing affects more people than maybe any of us believe possible. I couldn't give myself these feelings, this hope and recognition of a world that I have to accept and live in. I still can't accept it completely. In 2016, I failed to die. In 2018, I failed to attempt to die. In 2022, I struggled to make sense of my life. And now, I have to accept these parts of me I wish were gone. I have to carry every triumph and heartbreak, every joy and loss, every dear friend I've ever had, even the one who's died, who lives in my memories. I am still on my journey, and so are all of you. Thank you for watching.
「君のことを思